Good morning, Year 5. Okay, we are very nearly at the end of our newspaper learning. We've written our introduction, our paragraph 1 and paragraph 2. We have just got paragraph 3 and our conclusion to write. You will have seen this slide many times now, so let's see how quickly you can go through it. Pause the video, either jot it down or tell someone in the room. What information do newspapers give? Who is our audience? What's our purpose, and what are our top 5 features? Pause and off you go. Okay, let's see what you can remember. The information they give, they discuss current or relevant news. They tell us about events happening in the world, near us, or the other side of the world. Our audience, it's just anyone interested in the topic, but we are looking specifically at high school children interested in space. Our purpose, we're not entertaining them, we're not persuading them, we are informing them, so we are telling them the facts. Our top 5 features, first one, introduction and summary. Introduction, what does it do? That's right, it tells the reader what it's about, and our summary sums it up. Quotes, what do these do? Tell someone or pause the video. Well done, they help us give professional points of view. Range of logical conjunctions and adverbials. Why are these important? I'm sure you all got that. They help us make our writing flow more and add extra information and detail. Fourth one, paragraphs changing with time. If we are writing with paragraphs changing with time, what order are we writing in? Can you remember that one? I'm sure you'd all have got that. Chronological order. And finally, topic-specific vocabulary. So we are going to be using lots of words to do with space. Right, we've looked at this for the past week now. What does this word formal mean? Because I need to make sure that when I'm writing my newspaper, I am using formal language. So what does that mean? Can you pause the video and tell someone or jot it down? Off you go. Formal language is about using those posh words, so not necessarily the ones that just sound better, but our posh words, the vocabulary and words that just sound more serious and professional. Now this is important in a newspaper because we need to convince our readers that we actually know what we are on about. So remember, not just necessarily the best word, but the more serious words. Now, there are some rules for formal writing. Can you remember what these are? Pause the video, see how many you can remember, off you go. Right, our first one, no abbreviations. So I'm writing my words fully, I'm not shortening them. No slang, so you've got to write as if you're writing to the Queen, not as if you're talking to your mates at the park. No contractions, so those words like can't, doesn't, he's, we're not having them. It's got to be cannot, shall not, does not, he's not, or he is, okay? Numbers written in words. So if I'm writing, he had 3 theories, I can't have my number 3, I need to write it with my letters, so THREE. Unless I'm talking about dates. Dates are absolutely fine as numbers still. Right, considering this is kind of like our big write, it would have been in school, but obviously it's a bit different now. We would always have done our success criteria. We've looked at it the past couple of days now. So can you remember what we are looking for? So how am I going to make sure that my newspaper is as successful as possible? Either tell someone or jot it down. Pause the video and press play when you're ready. Okay, here they are. So I've got my top 5 features and paragraphs changing with time, meaning I need to stop my paragraphs with a time adverbial. But then I've got my other skills that I would still be expecting to see in your writing. So formal language, you can easily get brackets into this. A range of sentence starters, remember these are important, so our work doesn't sound repetitive and boring, and we're not starting every sentence with either as or the. Relative clauses, these are very useful in a newspaper just to help us give that extra detail and information, like factual information. So not what colour Aristotle's hair was, but maybe where he was born. And then obviously correct capital letters and punctuation. That involves commas surrounding fronted adverbials, relative clauses, and then our simple spellings. Okay, we need to watch out for these. When we're writing on the laptops or iPads or whatever, if you get a red squiggly line underneath, that means it's spelt incorrectly. So if you right click on it, okay, it will give you the correct spelling. So take the opportunity and use spell check to help you. Okay, here's our main man that we are talking about, good old Aristotle. So we've looked at these two theories already, but pause the video. What can you tell me about Aristotle and what do these two pictures represent? Which theories? Go. I'm sure we remembered them, but this picture is all about when a boat crosses the horizon, the hull, so the bottom of it, the base of the ship, disappears first and you are left seeing the mast because the earth is round, whereas if it was flat, it would just get smaller and smaller and smaller until you cannot see it. This one, what's the important word which is involved with the moon? It is eclipse, okay? So he realised it was round when the sun was then lined up with the earth and then the moon. So in that order, because then the sun's light was being blocked on the moon by the earth, and you can see the shadow here that it is slightly round. Obviously, if the earth was flat, it wouldn't have that curved edge. So there's two theories. We've already written about them. What's our final theory? It's under this box, but what's the final theory? Pause it, see if you can remember. That's right, it's all about to do with our constellations, so the stars that we can see in the sky. Because if the earth was flat and I had two people in at different ends of the world, if it was flat this is, they would still be able to see the same stars. Yes, they'd be in a different place, but they'd still be able to see the same stars. However, because it is round, if I'm looking at the stars here and my friend is looking at them in Australia down here, they are going to be able to see different stars. My Australian friend won't be able to see the stars up here that I will be able to see, and I won't be able to see the Australian stars. Okay, therefore it proves the Earth is round. So now we've recapped the topic and actually what we are writing about, the science, let's go to look at our actual writing. Right, here I've got my plan and I'm very quickly going to fill it in. So we've just recapped what his theory was, but can you sum up his theory of the constellations in less than 4 bullet points? Remember, our plans should not be full sentences, just bullet points. So what are the things that I will need to say in this paragraph? Jot them down on a piece of paper because this can be your plan. Go. Right, I've looked at the stars because obviously he wouldn't have come up with this theory looking at his kitchen table, so he'd have had to have looked at the stars to have realised this. And he realised you could see different ones in different places. If the Earth was flat, everyone would see the same ones. Must be round. Okay, so that's the order that I'm going to be writing it in. Now, what adverbials might I use to help me add some more detail to this? Okay, so think about you could easily turn this into an adverbial of time. Okay, see if you could do that, or think what others you could include in this paragraph. Pause the video, I'll give you some ideas in a moment. The two I've decided to go with are while studying the constellations, or in order to prove his hypothesis further, hypothesis being like a theory in science, but there are so many more you could have had. Other ones I've thought of were after researching this further, or after visiting numerous different places around the globe, whilst observing the night sky, or even you could have, because this is our last theory that we're discussing, you could start your paragraph with finally. Okay, one words can be adverbials too. Right, now we've got to look at the scientific vocabulary to use. So what keywords are we definitely going to be using to explain what his theory was. Jot them down on your page, off you go. Right, I've come up with these ones. You might have come up with more, that's absolutely fine. I've come up with constellations, because obviously we're talking about the stars, so constellations is better than just stars. I quite liked hypothesis, so I want to include that. I'm going to go with globe, because that sounds more scientific and more formal than world. And also northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. Now you might not have come across this before, so let me explain what I mean by this quickly. If this is my globe, okay, if I cut it in half at the equator, I've then got two halves. So the top half, because we've got north up here, is the northern hemisphere, and we've got the southern hemisphere. So obviously the stars in my northern hemisphere, so up here, are going to be different to the ones that I'm seeing in my southern hemisphere down here. So that might be a nice way to explain that using those vocabulary. And finally, our quote. Now try and get a different person to the last ones that you have done in your last two paragraphs. So if you've used Professor Parrot and Scientist Stevenson's, don't use them again. You might not have used Aristotle himself. You might want to give his point of view and say how he feels about his own theories. Pause the video, jot down who your quote's going to be. So I've gone for a quote by Aristotle himself, and it's going to say something along the lines of how he's very happy with his scientific breakthrough as he spent months of studying in isolation. I have quickly written a paragraph myself. Now this will help you with ideas because we're going to go through it and pull out what makes it a good one. Now I'm not saying that this is the best paragraph that could ever be written. I'm sure some of you will be able to do a better job, but this will just give us some ideas and look at how I have structured it and where I've used my different skills. Okay, so I've started while studying the constellations in the night sky. Now I had a very similar adverbial to this up in my plan, which I've used, and I just added to it a bit more. So I've got my adverbial telling me when it happened, and I just added a bit more from my plan to make it a bit better. Aristotle discovered yet a third scientific theory to prove that the Earth is roughly spherical. Now I used roughly spherical just to make it a bit more formal. After visiting numerous different places around the globe, so I've got another adverbial giving me a different sentence starter. Notice how I've used my comma afterwards. He realised that the constellations, I had that up in my plan, didn't I? I've used that. Observed in the southern hemisphere were different to the constellations that could be seen in the northern hemisphere. So I've used that from my plan, but I have realised I needed a capital letter for southern hemisphere and northern hemisphere. So make sure if you're using those words that you have capital letters too. Then I've got whereas, so I've used a conjunction there. Whereas if the Earth was flat, the same stars would always be visible regardless to a person's position on the globe. Okay, now I'd used world already, so that's why I'd used globe. Then I've got consequently, another conjunction. This strengthened his hypothesis, so I've got that, disproving the common belief of the Earth being flat. Notice how I've worded that, because I could have just said, this made his hypothesis better as it showed that everyone else's theory was wrong. But the way I've worded it made it sound quite formal, quite proper, and rather posh. Okay, and then this is where I've got my quote in. In a recent interview, so again, a different sentence starter, I've used an adverbial and I've still got my comma because it's the fronted adverbial. Aristotle reported, I'm missing my comma because it's speech, but I have used my inverted commas. I am tremendously excited. I thought I would make happy, because I had happy in my plan up here, I thought I'd make that a bit better, by my recent scientific breakthrough that I have spent a vast amount of months locked away in my study. Now that doesn't entirely make sense, so I'm going to edit that a little bit. I've just added working on. That I have spent a vast amount of months locked away in my study working on. But notice I've used a relative clause there because I started it with that, and I've got my comma. I am relieved all the hard work has paid off, and I've got my inverted comma and full stop at the end. Okay, so there are some ideas of the structure and the vocabulary, but notice how similar it actually was to my plan. I've used ideas from my plan, I've just made them I've just tweaked them a little bit in my writing, which is fine, but remember your plan is the important bit because that gives you all the ideas. So you can use my ideas, but all three of us teachers will have read this, so we will know how much you've copied from me and how much you've used yourself. So by all means take some, but I don't want to see this copied exactly word for word. We look forward to reading them because this is your third final paragraph of your so-called big write. If you need us, message us on our help desks or email. Enjoy!